As we gather today, it's not common that we have the opportunity of celebrating the feast day of our patroness actually on a Sunday. Usually the 26th is the day that we have to celebrate it, and that obviously can be any day during the week. This year we have that privilege of being able to do that. We celebrate in particular St. Anne, but obviously St. Joachim as well. And as we celebrate this feast day very much as we have been doing the last 9 days, as we've been having our novena, we've been praying through St. Anne to, give us, our theme has been peace. And each day we've looked at different ways that we need to find that peace. And as I was reflecting on what we've been looking at the last 9 days, which I'll go recap a little bit of that in a moment, I thought, well, our second reading today gives us some insight perhaps as to where we need to try and find peace, but also the challenge of trying to find peace, trying to understand God. And maybe that's where we need that wisdom of Solomon that God gave to Solomon in that first reading. Because in our second reading today, we hear St. Paul speak to the Romans. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. All things work together for good. I don't know about your life, but I know in mine, there are times that I'm not seeing how the challenging things that I'm dealing with can be considered good. Why has God given this cross to me? Why do I have to bear whatever it is that is going on? Life is full of challenges and unexpected changes, and sometimes things don't go the way that we planned, or we say, hey, I'm living a pretty good life. I'm trying. Why? Where is the good in this, God? How is this struggle? How is this setback, perhaps? This challenge that I'm going, how does it fit into the greater purpose? Many times I don't see that, so maybe you have that experience as well. But this reading reminds us that God is seeing the bigger picture, the bigger picture better than I can. He knows what is best, and he is always working in our lives and always working for that greater good that we may or may not be aware of. I know myself, many times I'm not, and afterwards I come to discover it. But do we have that kind of trust that Paul is speaking of? All things work together for good for those who love God. Now, there's a story some time ago, obviously, based on the person that this is about, of a man who interviewed Henry Ford, obviously the founder of the Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford was very old, and this person that was interviewing him was surprised to see him so calm and serene. Sir, are you not worried in your life? Don't you have any worries? Aren't you sort of stressed out in any kind of way? You have to face so many problems each day with your company and deal with so many workers. Don't you feel the strain on yourself? And Henry Ford's recorded to reply, no, I am not worried. I believe that God is managing the affairs and he doesn't need my advice. With God in charge, I believe that everything will work for the best in the end. Well, good for Henry Ford. I don't know if I'm there yet, but, that's what we need to be thinking about. God is managing the affairs. And maybe some of the things that we're going through we will not understand in this lifetime, but it'll be revealed to us in the next lifetime. But do I trust God enough? Do I know that all things work together for good for those who love God? Do I believe Paul's words? And that's what Paul is inviting us to allow God to guide us. When we let go of fear and trust him, then we can live in confidence. No matter what happens, God is always working for our good, despite the cloud that we might be in at sometimes. Even when we cannot see the outcome, God can still bring good from what we are living through. And that's where I think when we look at St. Anne and what we've been reflecting upon over the last 9 days helps us on our way. As I said, our theme, especially for those who have been here at any of those celebrations, it's been peace. And looking at peace from different perspectives, different angles. And I think when we look at St. Anne, who had a challenging life, in the sense that both she and St. Joachim struggled to conceive a child. And even in our day, it can be sometimes an issue, but in particular at that time, it was seen as a curse. The fact that they did not have a child, they must have been cursed. There must have been something wrong with them. They must have done something wrong, or there was something wrong in their genealogy. And so there was great grief on her part that she was not able to conceive. And she wasn't able to conceive until she was older. Obviously, we know that because Mary was born. But she carried that and she pleaded to the Lord, asking the Lord to provide. And he wouldn't answer her prayers year after year until one day he did. So I think St. Anne, in many ways, knows the struggle. And as we believe, we don't have anything in Scripture about St. Anne and St. Joachim, there was a peace that she maintained. And that's what we've been praying for over these last number of days. And as we've been looking at, we need peace in times of waiting and silence, peace over anxiety and worry. We need to surrender the mental exhaustion of trying to control the future. That's where anxiety comes from. Try to control. We got to surrender and let God take over. Peace in times of waiting and silence. As I said, she struggled waiting for that good news that she didn't know was going to happen, but she prayed was going to happen, that she would be able to conceive a child, that she wouldn't remain barren. And she had to trust in God's time, not hers. And maybe that's sometimes what we need to be looking at. Yes, we've been given a time to wait, and we wait in silence. And we need to see the peace that can be there when we surrender to God, when we turn to someone like St. Anne to help us. Trust in that. On day 2 and day 4, we were praying for peace within the home, peace through forgiveness and reconciliation. So many of our lives are dealing with turmoil, families that are broken in different ways. There's family friction, there's misunderstandings, there's tensions within the families with whatever might be going on. Sometimes there's resentments, bitter memories, family grudges, and how that disrupts the peace within the family. The family being that domestic church. We can see in St. Anne, we can see in how Mary was, that she must have grown up in a house of peace, a house that St. Anne made a place where they got along, they talked things out. They were open to making sure that they were respecting one another, honoring one another. Again, St. Anne is one that we can turn to help us with that. Because many of us know of families, or maybe it is our family, that's, we'll hear siblings don't talk to one another, children don't talk to their parents, and vice versa. That's not how it's supposed to be. We can bring that to the Lord and say, Lord, bring peace to my family. That's what we need to do. Turn to him, turn to St. Anne. And I'm been pleased to say, I was told a story of a family within our community here that for years have been struggling with those kinds of issues within their family. And just a few days ago, 2 of the members of the family that were not talking to one another had a conversation, a fruitful conversation. Now, maybe that'll just be a one-off and things go back to the way that they were. But they've been praying through this novena, and St. Anne was responding to their pleas to bring peace to that family. Prayer does work. Our saints are there to intercede for us. The peace that we've been praying for, yes, we're already seeing some of the fruits of that. And we've been praying for peace amidst physical suffering and aging. How many of us are aging out there? All of us. And I hear the stories and the challenges that are there. You can say, Lord, why have you given me this ailment? Why do my muscles hurt more than they used to? Why don't I have, reflecting on my life now, why don't I have the mobility that I used to? And as I keep telling you, I'm only 59 and I'm already experiencing those things. And people tell me, well, wait till you get to 75 or 80. I'm like, oh goodness. But, and then we also have more serious things that we're dealing with. And again, sometimes we don't understand, where is the good in this? And if I may share for a moment, my mother right now, who does have kidney disease and liver disease, has been inflicted with about a month and a half ago with a broken back, something with the 10th and 11th vertebrae thing. I don't understand all that stuff. All I know is she's in great pain. And that's disrupting the peace in our home. As she cries out in pain every time she moves. She's moaning and all these different things. They're trying to find different pain meds, but we got to be careful with some of the pain meds because of her liver and kidney disease. And the tension that can be there. And it's like, oh, can't you just be quiet? Peace is not there. But we've been offering it up in prayer, and now we found some new meds that are working for her, and she's still in pain, but it's not as bad. Where's the good that God's trying to work there? I don't know. Maybe God's trying to teach me patience, understanding, compassion. Whatever it is, God, I know, is working. I'd like him to be working a little bit faster, especially for my mother's sake. But there we go. Can we find peace amidst physical suffering and aging? Yes, we can, if we turn it to the Lord, offer it to him. And that's what my mother's done. That's what we're doing as a family. And we're experiencing that peace coming into our family now. Not perfectly, so don't quote me on that one, but we're working on it. God is working through us. Saint Anne is interceding for us. Peace in times of financial strain, we reflected on day 6. How many of us are struggling at this time? Finding a job, dealing with inflation, dealing with the challenges that are out there. God, why? Where's the good in this? I don't know. Let's trust him and turn it over to St. Anne to help us. Maybe sometimes God is challenging us to simplify our lives. Maybe we've gotten too caught up in worldly things, as we heard in our gospel. Where's our treasure? Is it caught up in all the things of the world? Or are we, recognizing the essentials that we need and focus on that? Maybe that's how we'll find some peace in the midst of our financial strain. In peace on day 7 in our community and companionship, and on day 8, peace in our world. We know we need peace in our family of parishes, in our community, in our world. We don't have to listen too long to the news to hear the conflicts that are going on, conflicts between people because of beliefs, because of nationality, because of ethnicity, conflicts because of war and violence and all those kinds of things. Why, Lord? Where's the good in all of that? Well, we need to trust that he's working through hearts to convert hearts to say, no, we need to be one in peace, with one another. We are all cohabitors of this planet. We need to care for it and for one another in peace, respecting one another, the dignity of one another. Through St. Anne again, we can turn to her because obviously, she was one of peace. We can see that through Mary, and then Mary passed that on through Jesus. And ultimately, as we reflected on day 9, we need to be ambassadors of peace. Experiencing that peace, we need to bring that peace to others, but we first have to find it within ourselves. So as we continue our celebration today, as we continue our faith journey, yes, we've been given the grace of having a great saint to intercede for us, St. Anne. We've been reflecting on peace that's needed in our world. Let us pray in whatever way each one of us needs that, we will get it. And we will not get frustrated while we're waiting to see the good in it, but to know that God is working through it to bring good. And that's all we need to know.